They say money screams, but wealth whispers. And on the night of December 14th, at the most exclusive gala in Manhattan, silence was the loudest weapon in the room. Arthur Sterling stood at the center of the universe, a billionaire hedge fund king who believed he was untouchable. He had the world at his feet and the perfect woman on his arm. But at 9:07 p.m., his wife, Evelyn, handed her champagne glass to a waiter, walked out the side door, and vanished into the winter night. She didn't take $1. She didn't pack a bag. She simply initiated a sequence of events that would, by sunrise, turn Arthur's empire into ash. This isn't just a divorce. This is an execution. Here is the story of the most expensive exit in history. The air inside the Pierre Hotel smelled of white truffles, vintage Krug champagne, and the specific metallic scent of desperate ambition. It was the annual Winter Solstice Ball, a charity event where entry required a net worth of 9 figures and a surname that could open doors at the White House. Arthur Sterling adjusted the cuffs of his bespoke Tom Ford tuxedo. At 42, Arthur was the golden boy of Wall Street. His firm, Sterling & Caffelou, had just posted a 40% return in a bear market. He was the man who saw the future. He was the man who couldn't lose. "Smile, darling," Arthur murmured, his hand resting possessively on the small of his wife's back. "Senator Caldwell is looking over here. We need his vote on the deregulation bill." Evelyn Sterling turned to him. She was wearing a dress that would be talked about in Vogue for months, a midnight blue velvet gown that seemed to absorb the light around her, adorned with a single, massive sapphire necklace that had once belonged to the Romanovs. Evelyn was 35, beautiful in a sharp, intimidating way, with eyes the color of cold coffee. She had been Arthur's wife for 7 years. In all that time, he had never truly figured out what she was thinking. "I'm smiling, Arthur," she said. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Arthur took a sip of his drink, his eyes scanning the room. He saw rivals he had crushed and politicians he had bought. "Tonight is the night, Evie. Once the Asian markets open, the merger goes through. We'll be worth $6 billion by breakfast." "$6 billion," Evelyn repeated, testing the weight of the words. "Is that enough?" Arthur laughed, a short, barking sound. "It's never enough. That's the point." The orchestra swelled, playing a waltz. Arthur was distracted by a notification on his phone, a text from his CFO, confirming the final data transfer for the merger. He tapped a quick reply, "Execute at midnight." When he looked up, Evelyn was staring at him. There was a strange expression on her face. It wasn't love. It wasn't hate. It was something closer to pity. "I'm going to the ladies' room," she said softly. "My lipstick." "Hurry back," Arthur said, already looking past her toward a tech CEO he needed to charm. "They're serving the lobster soon." Evelyn nodded. She leaned in, and for a fleeting second, Arthur thought she was going to kiss him. Instead, she whispered 3 words against his ear. "Checkmate, King Arthur." He frowned, pulling back. "What?" But she was already walking away. He watched her move through the crowd, the midnight blue dress cutting a path through the sea of black tuxedos and red gowns. He watched her speak briefly to a waiter, handing him her full glass of champagne. He watched her turn the corner toward the grand staircase. Arthur checked his watch. 9:07 p.m. He didn't know it yet, but that was the exact moment his life ended. He spent the next hour working the room. He shook hands with the mayor of New York. He discussed interest rates with the head of the Federal Reserve. He felt like a god walking among mortals. But by 10:15 p.m., a vague annoyance began to prick at him. Evelyn hadn't returned. He pulled out his phone and texted her. "Where are you? Dinner is being served." No reply. He waited 10 minutes. Then he called. It went straight to voicemail. "You've reached Evelyn. Leave a message." Arthur scowled. He hated being made to look foolish. A man like him didn't sit alone at a gala table. He signaled his head of security, a massive former Navy SEAL named Graves, who was standing discreetly by the exit. Graves walked over, his earpiece coiled tight against his neck. "Mr. Sterling?" "Find my wife," Arthur said, cutting into his lobster tail. "She went to the restroom an hour ago. She's probably sulking in the lobby or having a cigarette outside. Bring her back." Graves nodded and melted into the crowd. Arthur ate his dinner. The annoyance was turning into anger. How dare she? Tonight was his coronation. She knew the rules. She was the ornament, the silent partner, the proof of his stability. 10 minutes later, Graves returned. His face, usually a mask of stone, looked pale. "Sir," Graves whispered, leaning down so the guests at the nearby table wouldn't hear. "We have a problem. She's not in the lobby. She's not in the hotel, sir." Arthur put down his fork. "What do you mean?" "The doorman says she left at 9:10 p.m. She walked out the side exit onto 61st Street. Did she take the limousine?" "No, sir," Graves said, his voice dropping even lower. "She got into a yellow cab." Arthur stared at him. "A cab? Evelyn hasn't been in a cab since 2015. Where did she go?" "Home." "We called the penthouse. The staff says she isn't there." "And sir?" "She left her phone." Graves produced a sleek iPhone from his pocket. It was Evelyn's. It was unlocked. Arthur snatched the phone. His heart gave a single, hard thump against his ribs. Why would she leave her phone? Evelyn lived on her phone. Her entire social calendar, her contacts, her life was in there. He looked at the screen. The background photo, usually a picture of their vacation in Saint-Tropez, had been changed. It was now a black screen with white text in the center. A countdown clock. 2:45 gas. And counting down. "What is this?" Arthur hissed. "I don't know, sir, but there's something else." Graves hesitated. The waiter she handed her glass to. "He gave me this. He said Mrs. Sterling told him to give it to you only after you asked where she was." Graves handed Arthur a small, heavy object. It was a USB drive, solid silver, engraved with the Sterling family crest. Arthur's stomach dropped. The room seemed to tilt. The laughter and clinking of silverware around him faded into a dull roar. He gripped the silver drive. "Get the car," Arthur said, standing up so abruptly his chair screeched against the marble floor. "Now." "Where are we going, sir? The penthouse?" "No," Arthur said, his eyes fixed on the countdown on Evelyn's phone. "The office. Take me to the server room." The ride to Wall Street was a blur of neon lights and rain. Arthur sat in the back of the Maybach, clutching Evelyn's phone and the silver USB drive. The countdown was ticking. 02 passat 14 to 32. He tried to rationalize it. It was a prank, a sick game. Maybe she was having a breakdown. Maybe she was angry about the affair he'd had last year with the PR consultant. But she had known about that. They had moved past it. He had bought her the villa in Como to smooth that over. He called his chief technology officer, Benji, a 26-year-old prodigy who practically lived in the server room. "Benji," Arthur barked into the phone. "I'm coming in. Is everything secure?" Yeah, Arthur. Just doing the final prep for the merger." "Why?" "Just be there." Arthur hung up. He looked out the window. The city looked different tonight, hostile. The towering skyscrapers felt like bars of a cage. When they arrived at the Sterling-encumbered building, the lobby was empty except for the night security. Arthur stormed past them, Graves close behind. They took the private elevator to the 40th floor. The trading floor was dark, illuminated only by the standby lights of 100 Bloomberg terminals. It was a ghost town of capitalism. Arthur marched straight to his office, a glass box overlooking the harbor. He slammed the silver USB drive into his laptop. A window popped up. No password required, just a single video file named thetruth.enforceable. Arthur clicked play. Evelyn appeared on the screen. She was sitting in a chair Arthur recognized. It was the armchair in his private study at home. She was wearing a simple white sweater, looking directly into the camera. She looked younger, softer, yet terrifyingly composed. "Hello, Arthur," the video Evelyn said. "If you're watching this, you've realized I'm gone. You're probably at the office. You're probably wondering how much I know." She paused, taking a sip of tea. "I know everything, Arthur. I know about the shell companies in the Caymans. I know about Project Icarus. I know that Sterling and Co. isn't a hedge fund. It's a Ponzi scheme built on high-frequency trading algorithms that don't actually exist. You've been paying old investors with new money for 3 years." Arthur froze. The blood drained from his face. No one knew about Icarus. Only him and his late partner, who had died in a skiing accident 2 years ago. It was impossible. "You think you're a genius," Evelyn continued, "but you were sloppy. You left your ledger open on the yacht last summer. You thought I was sunbathing. I was reading." On the screen, Evelyn leaned forward. "You have exactly 2 hours until that countdown on my phone reaches 0. When it does, an automated email will be sent to the SEC, the FBI, and the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal. Attached to that email are the real ledgers. Every transaction, every bribe, every fake trade." Arthur slammed his fist on the desk. "No." "However," Evelyn said, a cruel smile touching her lips, "I am a merciful woman. There is a way to stop the email, a kill switch. But it will cost you." Arthur leaned in, desperate. "Name it. Anything." "The kill switch code," she said, "is the exact amount of money remaining in the sovereign account. You know the one. Transfers are instant. You have to drain it. Send every cent to the account number I've embedded in this drive. Once the sovereign account reads 0, the email stops." The screen went black. Arthur sat back, breathing heavily. The sovereign account. It was his escape fund, his rainy day money. It held $800 million in untraceable cryptocurrency and offshore bonds. It was everything he had personally stashed away, separate from the company, separate from the investors. It was his freedom. She wanted him to bankrupt himself to save the company. "Benji!" Arthur screamed. The young CTO ran into the office, looking terrified. "Boss? What's going on?" "Check the system," Arthur ordered, pointing at the screen. "Is there a scheduled outbound email? Can we stop it?" Benji typed furiously on Arthur's keyboard. Lines of code cascaded down the screen. "Whoa, this is sophisticated, Arthur. It's a dead man's switch. It's embedded in the kernel of our main server. If I try to delete it, it triggers instantly. Can you trace where it's sending?" "SEC, FBI. Yeah, she wasn't lying. And the attachment, it's 4 terabytes of data. It looks like our entire internal history." Arthur looked at the countdown on the phone. 48. He had to make a choice. If he let the email go out, he went to prison for life. The fraud was massive. He would die in a cell. If he paid her, he lost his personal fortune. But he kept the company. He could rebuild. The merger was tomorrow. If the merger went through, he'd make billions. He could refill the sovereign account in a year. "She's bluffing," Arthur whispered. "She can't be this smart. She's just a socialite." "Arthur," Benji said, his voice trembling. "Look at the account she wants the money sent to." Arthur looked at the string of numbers on the screen. It wasn't a Swiss bank. It wasn't Cayman. "It's a routing number for the Department of Justice Forfeiture Fund," Benji said. "But masked." "No, wait." Benji squinted. "It's spoofed. It looks like a government account, but it routes through a dozen relays. Estonia, Panama, Singapore. If you send this money, it's gone. It'll be washed through so many crypto mixers we'll never find it." "She wants to rob me," Arthur realized. "She doesn't care about the law. She wants the money." He grabbed his phone and dialed his private banker in Zurich. It was 4 a.m. there, but the man answered on the first ring. "Mr. Sterling? Heinrich, I need to make a transfer, the entire balance of the sovereign account." "Sir? That is highly irregular. Verification will take time." "I don't have time," Arthur roared. "Bypass verification. Use my voice print. Code Alpha 09. Do it now." He waited, sweat dripping down his forehead. He watched the minutes tick by. "Transfer initiated, sir," Heinrich said, sounding shaken. $842 million. It is leaving your account now." Arthur hung up. He watched the laptop screen. A new window popped up. Payment received. Kill switch activated. Email cancelled. Arthur slumped into his chair. He had done it. He was broke personally. But he was safe. The company was safe. The merger would happen tomorrow. He would survive. He looked at Benji. "Wipe this drive. Destroy the phone. Never speak of this." "Sure, boss. Sure." Arthur stood up, his legs shaking. He needed a drink. He needed to find Evelyn and kill her. But first, he needed to sleep. "I'm going home," Arthur said. "Graves, take me to the penthouse." He walked out of the office, believing the nightmare was over. He believed he had paid the ransom and won his life back. He was wrong. The nightmare hadn't even started. As he stepped into the elevator, his phone buzzed. Not Evelyn's phone, his own. It was a notification from the Wall Street Journal, a breaking news alert. Breaking: massive data leak exposes Sterling and Covers as Ponzi scheme. CEO Arthur Sterling implicated in multi-billion-dollar fraud. Arthur stared at the screen. The elevator doors closed. The email hadn't been stopped. Evelyn had lied. She had taken his money. And she had released the data anyway. The elevator began to descend, but Arthur felt like he was falling into a bottomless pit. The elevator descent from the 40th floor to the lobby usually took 45 seconds. For Arthur Sterling, it felt like a lifetime spent in a pressurized coffin. The red numbers above the door flickered down. 39, 30, 20, sinking with the catastrophic collapse of his reality. He stared at his phone, his thumb swiping frantically through the news alert. It wasn't just a headline. It was everything. The Wall Street Journal had published the full Icarus ledger. There were PDFs, audio recordings, and emails. The article detailed how he had bribed Senator Caldwell, how he had falsified the Q3 earnings report. It was a forensic autopsy of his career, executed while he was still breathing. "She lied," he whispered, the realization tasting like bile in his throat. She took the money and burned the house down anyway. He looked at Graves. The security chief was listening to his earpiece, his face draining of color. "Boss," Graves said, his voice tight. "We can't go out the front. The lobby is swarming. NYPD, FBI, and the press. They're already here." "The helipad," Arthur snapped. "Take us back up." "We can't," Graves replied. "Building security just locked down the elevators. They've overridden my clearance. We're being routed to the lobby automatically." Arthur slammed his fist against the metal doors. "No, I am the owner of this building." "Not anymore, sir." The elevator jolted to a halt at the ground floor. The doors slid open with a cheerful ding. The noise hit him like a physical blow. The lobby of the Sterling building, usually a cathedral of silence and marble, was a chaotic storm of flashing cameras and shouting voices. A phalanx of uniformed officers formed a wall near the turnstiles. In front of them stood Special Agent Miller, a man Arthur had met once at a fundraiser. A man who had smiled at him then, but now wore a windbreaker with those 3 terrifying yellow letters. FBI. "Arthur Sterling," Miller's voice cut through the din. "Step away from the elevator and put your hands where I can see them." Arthur froze. The flashes from the paparazzi blinded him. He could hear the questions being screamed by the reporters. "Mr. Sterling, where is the missing pension money? Did your wife turn you in? Is it true the company is bankrupt?" Graves stepped in front of Arthur, a reflex of loyalty. "Back off!" "Stand down, Graves," Miller barked, hand resting on his holster. "This is a federal RICO indictment. Don't add obstruction to your rap sheet." Graves hesitated, then looked at Arthur. The billionaire nodded slowly. There was no fighting this. Not here. Not now. Arthur stepped forward, raising his hands. The cufflinks Evelyn had given him for their anniversary caught the harsh light of the cameras. He felt the cold steel of handcuffs snap around his wrists. The sensation was shocking. He was Arthur Sterling. He didn't get arrested. He got subpoenaed. He got fined. He didn't get cuffed. "You're making a mistake," Arthur said, trying to summon the voice that had commanded boardrooms. "Call my lawyer. Call Silas Thorne." "Mr. Thorne is already on his way," Miller said, guiding him roughly toward the revolving doors. "Though I doubt he can fix this. We have the server, Arthur. We have everything." As they marched him out into the cold December rain, the crowd surged. Arthur saw the faces of his employees pressed against the glass of the nearby cafe. Analysts and traders who had been working late, now watching their futures disintegrate. He saw the hatred in their eyes. They shoved him into the back of an unmarked SUV. Miller climbed in beside him. "Where is she?" Arthur hissed, ignoring his Miranda rights being read by the driver. "Where is my wife?" Miller looked at him, confused. "Your wife? We have an APB out for her too, Arthur. She's listed as a co-conspirator. We assumed she was with you." Arthur laughed, a dry, broken sound. "Co-conspirator? She's the whistleblower. She's the architect." "We'll see," Miller said. "Right now, your accounts are frozen. All of them. Even the offshore ones you thought we didn't know about. We tracked a massive transfer of $840 million tonight to a dark account. Trying to hide your assets before the bust?" Arthur closed his eyes, his head banging against the headrest. The final twist of the knife. Evelyn hadn't just stolen his money. She had framed the theft as his attempt to hide assets from the feds. By transferring the money to her spoofed account, he had created a digital paper trail that looked exactly like money laundering. She hadn't just checkmated him. She had flipped the board and set the table on fire. "She played me," Arthur whispered to the rain-streaked window. "She played us all." The car sped off toward the Federal Detention Center in Brooklyn. Arthur watched the skyline of Manhattan recede. Somewhere out there, in the city of 8 million people, Evelyn was moving through the shadows, and he had the sinking feeling that she was just getting started. 72 hours later, Arthur Sterling sat in a small, windowless interview room. The orange jumpsuit itched. The fluorescent lights hummed with a headache-inducing frequency. He hadn't slept. He hadn't eaten. The door opened, and Silas Thorne walked in. Silas was the most expensive defense attorney in New York, a man who looked like a vulture in a 3-piece suit. He carried a leather briefcase and an expression of grim resignation. "Tell me you have good news," Arthur said, his voice raspy. Silas sat down, not bothering to open his briefcase. I got you bail. 10 million. House arrest. Ankle monitor. No internet access. Fine, whatever. Get me out of here so I can find her. Arthur, Silas said softly. You need to listen to me. We have a private investigator. Kenzo, the best in the business, looking into Evelyn. We needed to find leverage to discredit her evidence. And she doesn't exist. Arthur stared at him. What the hell are you talking about? I've been married to her for 7 years. We met at the Gala. Her father was a diplomat in Vienna. She went to Vassar. Silas slid a manila folder across the metal table. Arthur opened it. Inside were copies of birth certificates, college transcripts, and passport records, all stamped with red ink. Forgery. The woman you married, Silas said, was created 8 years ago. The diploma from Vassar? Fake. The diplomat father. Died in 1990. Had no children. The social security number she used on your marriage license? It belonged to a girl who died in a car crash in Ohio in 2005. Arthur flipped through the pages, his hands shaking. Photos of Evelyn from before they met. There were none. No high school yearbooks. No childhood photos. Who is she? Arthur whispered. We don't know, Silas admitted. But whoever she is, she's a professional. Kenzo found something in the penthouse. After the feds tossed the place, he went in to do a sweep. He found a hidden panel in her walk-in closet, behind the shoe rack. What was in it? Nothing, Silas said. It was vacuumed clean. But she left one thing taped to the back of the wall, a receipt. Silas pulled a small, crumpled piece of thermal paper from his pocket and placed it on the table. Arthur picked it up. It was a receipt from a diner in Queens called The Rusty Spoon, dated 8 years ago. The order was for 2 coffees and a slice of cherry pie. On the back, in Evelyn's elegant cursive handwriting, was a note. Payment for the lesson. Phase 1 complete. Phase 1? Arthur looked up, terror dawning in his eyes. You think marrying me was just phase 1? It looks like a long con, Arthur. A very long con. She spent a year establishing a fake identity, positioned herself in your social circles, waited for you to bite, married you, and spent 7 years gathering evidence while playing the trophy wife. She waited until the merger, when your liquidity would be highest and your guard lowest, to strike. But why? Arthur slammed his hand on the table. For money. She had money. I gave her everything. It's not just money, Silas said. The feds received a package this morning. It wasn't digital. It was a physical box sent to the lead prosecutor. It contained a diary. Her diary? No. The diary of a man named Marcus Vane. The blood drained from Arthur's face so fast he nearly fainted. The room spun. Marcus Vane. He hadn't heard that name in 15 years. Marcus Vane was a brilliant analyst, a rival from Arthur's early days. They had competed for the same promotion at their first firm. Marcus had discovered that Arthur was insider trading. He had threatened to go to the SEC. 2 days later, Marcus Vane had committed suicide, jumped off the George Washington Bridge. No note. His death had cleared the path for Arthur's ascent. The diary details how you bullied him, Silas said, his voice dropping to a whisper. How you gaslit him. And it implies you didn't just drive him to suicide. It implies you hired someone to help him over the railing. That's a lie, Arthur croaked. I didn't touch him. It doesn't matter what the truth is, Silas said. The public eats it up. The narrative is set. You're the villain. She's the avenging angel. But here is the kicker, Arthur. We looked into Marcus Vane's family. He was an orphan. But he had a younger sister. She was 12 when he died. She went into the foster system and vanished. Arthur looked at the photo of Evelyn in the file, a paparazzi shot of her smiling at him on the red carpet. He looked at her eyes, the cold, coffee eyes. Marcus had blue eyes, Arthur whispered. Evelyn's are brown. Coloured contacts, Silas shrugged. Or maybe she isn't the sister. Maybe she's someone else entirely. But she hates you, Arthur. This is personal. She didn't just want to rob you. She wanted to dismantle you, piece by piece. The guard knocked on the door. Time's up. Silas stood up. I'll work on the bail. But Arthur, if you get out, don't go looking for her. She's gone. You have $800 million missing, the feds breathing down your neck, and a ghost who knows all your secrets. If you find her, I don't think you'll survive the encounter. Arthur didn't answer. He stared at the receipt from the Rusty Spoon. Phase 1 complete. He knew then that Silas was wrong. He had to find her. Not for the money. Not for revenge. He had to find her because she was the only one who knew how this story ended. And if Phase 1 was his destruction, he was terrified to know what Phase 2 was. As the guard led him back to his cell, Arthur's mind raced. The Rusty Spoon. Queens. It was the only lead he had. If he ever got out of this cage, that was where he would start. He would hunt the ghost. But as the heavy steel door slammed shut, leaving him in darkness, Arthur realized the truth. He wasn't the hunter. He was the prey. And the hunt was far from over. The penthouse at 432 Park Avenue was no longer a home. It was a golden cage suspended 400 feet in the air. Arthur stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the ants scurrying along 57th Street. He was wearing the ankle monitor, a chunky black plastic brick strapped to his left leg. The green light blinked every 3 seconds, a silent reminder that the FBI was watching his heartbeat. He had been back for 24 hours. The silence in the apartment was deafening. The staff had been let go, their NDAs dissolved by the federal indictment. Furniture was draped in plastic sheets, tagged with evidence numbers. The feds had taken the computers, the art, and the safe. But they hadn't taken the wine cellar. Arthur poured himself a glass of lukewarm tap water. The utilities were being throttled, and sat on the floor of his study. He spread the few items he had managed to smuggle out of jail on the hardwood. The crumpled receipt from the Rusty Spoon, a burner phone Graves had slipped him before disappearing, and a Swiss Army knife. He stared at the receipt. The Rusty Spoon, Queens, October 14th, 2015. The date gnawed at him. October 14th wasn't just a random Tuesday. It was the anniversary of the day Marcus Vane had jumped. It's a pilgrimage, Arthur muttered to the empty room. She went there every year to honor him. He checked the burner phone. He had one contact left. Not a lawyer, not a banker, but a man named Cypher. A grey-hat hacker Arthur had used years ago for corporate espionage. He typed a message. Need a 20-minute loop. GPS and vitals. Price is triple. The reply came in seconds. Done. Uploading patch to local frequency. You have 18 minutes once I trigger it. Go. Arthur taped the burner phone to the inside of the ankle monitor. Cypher's tech would create a localized signal bubble, feeding the FBI monitoring station a looped signal of Arthur sitting on his couch with a steady pulse, while Arthur himself was moving. He had 18 minutes to get out of the most watched building in New York. He went to the service elevator. It was guarded by a rookie uniform cop, a kid more interested in his phone than the door. Arthur waited. At 2:00 p.m., the daily grocery delivery for the remaining residents arrived. A cart full of boxes was wheeled out of the elevator. Arthur moved. He wasn't the billionaire CEO anymore. He was a desperate animal. He slipped into the service corridor, grabbed a discarded maintenance jumpsuit from a janitorial closet, and pulled a cap low over his eyes. He waited for the cart to return to the elevator. As the doors slid shut, he squeezed in behind the delivery dolly, keeping his head down. The ride down took forever. When the doors opened to the loading dock, he walked briskly, carrying a clipboard he'd grabbed off the wall. "Hey!" a voice shouted. Arthur froze. He turned slowly. The loading dock manager was staring at him. "You forgot to sign out, buddy." Arthur scribbled a fake signature on the logbook. "Sorry. New guy." He walked out into the alleyway. The cold air hit him. He checked his watch. He had 14 minutes left before the signal loop broke, and the FBI realized he was gone. He flagged a yellow cab on 56th Street. "Queens," Arthur said, sliding a wad of cash through the partition. "Astoria, and drive like the devil is chasing you." "Bad breakup?" the driver joked, eyeing Arthur's jumpsuit. "Something like that." As the cab merged onto the Queensboro Bridge, Arthur looked back at the Manhattan skyline. The spire of his building pierced the clouds. He was leaving the empire he built. He was heading into the past, to a diner in Queens, to find a ghost. The Rusty Spoon was a relic of a dying New York. It sat under the rattling tracks of the N train, a chrome and neon diner that smelled of stale coffee and fryer grease. It was the kind of place where people went to disappear. Arthur pushed open the door. A bell chimed. The diner was mostly empty, a trucker eating pie at the counter, a couple arguing in hushed tones in the corner. Arthur walked to the booth in the back, the exact booth where Evelyn must have sat 8 years ago. He sat down, facing the door. A waitress in a pink uniform approached, popping gum. "What can I get you, hun?" Arthur placed the receipt on the table. It was yellowed and fragile. "I'm looking for the person who sat here. October 14th, every year." The waitress looked at the receipt, then at Arthur. Her eyes narrowed. "You look like the guy on the news, the billionaire who lost it all." "I'm just a guy looking for his wife," Arthur said, sliding a $100 bill across the Formica table. The waitress took the bill, tucking it into her apron. "She came here, every year. Quiet lady, sad eyes, always ordered cherry pie, never ate it, just sat there for an hour, then left." "Did she ever meet anyone?" "Only once," a gravelly voice said from the booth behind him. Arthur spun around. Sitting in the adjacent booth was a man who looked like he had been carved out of granite and left to weather in the storm. He wore a faded trench coat and a fedora that had seen better decades. His face was a map of scars and deep lines. He was nursing a black coffee. "Who are you?" Arthur demanded. "The name's Tobias," the man grunted. "Tobias Gregson. I used to be a detective. Then I worked for Marcus Vane." Arthur felt a chill that had nothing to do with the drafty door. "You knew Marcus?" "I knew him," Tobias said, turning to face Arthur. "I was the one who fished his body out of the Hudson, or what was left of it." Tobias reached into his coat. Arthur flinched, expecting a gun. Instead, Tobias pulled out a pack of cigarettes and lit one, ignoring the no smoking sign. "You think Evelyn is Marcus's sister?" Tobias said, exhaling a plume of blue smoke. "That's what your fancy lawyers think. That's the easy answer." "Who is she then?" Arthur hissed. "Tell me." "Marcus didn't have a sister," Tobias said. "He was an only child, but he had a fiancée, a brilliant girl, computer science major. She was the one who wrote the code Marcus used to catch you insider trading the first time. She was the brains, Arthur. Marcus was just the face." Arthur's mind reeled. A fiancée? Her name was Nora, Tobias continued. Nora Vance. After Marcus died, she had a breakdown. Disappeared. Everyone thought she killed herself too. But Nora didn't die. She went to Zurich, She got plastic surgery. She changed her hair, her voice, her walk. She spent 2 years learning how to be a high society debutante. She created Evelyn from thin air. Tobias leaned forward, his eyes hard as flint. She didn't just want to destroy you, Arthur. She wanted to replace you. She wanted to prove she was smarter than you, and she did. "Where is she?" Arthur asked, his voice trembling. "I need to find her." "She knew you'd come here," Tobias said. "She left something for you." Tobias reached under the table and pulled out a small red velvet box, the kind that holds an engagement ring. He slid it to Arthur. Arthur opened the box. Inside, there was no ring. There was a single silver bullet and a small folded note. Arthur unfolded the paper. Checkmate was just the beginning. "If you want your life back, meet me where it started. Tonight. Midnight. The roof." "The roof?" Arthur looked up. "What roof?" "The roof of the Sterling building," Tobias said. "Where you stood on the day the company went public. Where you took the photo that was on the cover of Forbes." Arthur looked at the bullet. It was a threat. Or a promise. "Why are you telling me this?" Arthur asked Tobias. "You worked for Marcus. You should hate me." Tobias smiled, a gruesome expression that showed yellowed teeth. "I do hate you, Arthur. But Nora, she's gone off the deep end. Justice is one thing. What she's planning for tonight, that's not justice. That's a massacre. She's rigged the game so that no one wins." Suddenly the sirens started. Arthur looked out the window. Blue and red lights were flooding the street. The FBI had tracked the signal loop. They knew he was gone. They had pinged the burner phone. "You need to go," Tobias said calmly. "Out the back. Through the kitchen. There's a fire escape." "Why help me?" "Because," Tobias said, picking up his coffee, "I want to see if you have the guts to face her. Now run." Arthur grabbed the velvet box and the note. He bolted toward the kitchen just as the front door burst open. "FBI, nobody move!" Arthur scrambled through the grease-stained kitchen, past the startled cooks, and kicked open the back door. He sprinted down the alleyway, the sirens wailing behind him like banshees. He was a fugitive. He was broke. He was hunted. But now he knew who he was fighting. He wasn't fighting a ghost. He was fighting Nora Vance, the genius he had widowed, the woman who had slept beside him for 7 years dreaming of his execution. Tonight. Midnight. The roof. He had 4 hours to get back into the city, bypass the police cordon around his own building, and climb to the top of the world for one final showdown. Arthur checked the bullet in his pocket. It was heavy. He started to run. Midnight in New York is never truly dark, but on the rooftop of the Sterling building, the darkness felt absolute. A heavy, suffocating blanket that pressed down on the city. The wind howled with a pitch-black fury, whipping around the steel spires like a trapped animal. The helipad, once the ultimate symbol of Arthur Sterling's dominance, the place where he had landed in his Sikorsky S-76 to pop champagne after his first billion, was now a slick, rain-lashed stage set for his final act. Arthur had made it. But the journey had cost him every shred of his dignity. He had been smuggled out of Queens in the back of a garbage truck, suffocating in the stench of refuse to cross the bridge undetected. He had bribed a terrified maintenance worker with a Patek Philippe watch worth more than the man's house just to access the freight elevator shaft. And finally, he had climbed the last 20 floors on a rusted, vibrating service ladder, his muscles screaming, his lungs burning with every breath. He pulled himself over the parapet and collapsed onto the wet concrete of the roof. He was soaking wet, his stolen janitor's jumpsuit torn at the knees, his hands bleeding raw from the climb. He gasped for air, the cold rain mixing with the sweat on his face. He stood up, his legs shaking, and looked across the expanse of the roof. She was waiting for him. Nora, stood near the edge, her silhouette framed against the glowing haze of the city below. She wasn't wearing the velvet gown from the Gala, nor the nondescript clothes of a fugitive on the run. She wore a sharp, tailored white suit, pristine and glowing in the ambient city light. It was a suit of armor. She looked ethereal, terrifying, like an avenging angel sent to scrub the sin from the earth. "You're late," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the gale-force wind with supernatural clarity. She didn't turn around. She kept her gaze fixed on the horizon, where the lights of the city merged with the low-hanging clouds. Arthur took a step forward, his boots squelching on the wet surface. "I had some trouble with the doormen," he rasped, his voice a broken croak. "Nora." She turned then. The name hit her like a physical blow. For a split second, the mask of Evelyn Sterling, the poised, perfect socialite he had woken up next to for 7 years, cracked. Beneath it, he saw the raw, festering wound of a woman who had lost everything 15 years ago. He saw the grief, the rage, the exhaustion. But then, as quickly as it had appeared, the mask sealed shut. Her expression hardened into smooth, impenetrable marble. She smiled, that terrifying, pitying smile that had haunted his nightmares for the last 3 days. "Tobias talks too much," she said, her tone conversational, as if they were discussing the weather. "I knew I should have cut him loose years ago. Sentimentality is a weakness, isn't it, Arthur?" "It's over, Nora," Arthur said, moving slowly toward her, his hands raised in surrender. "The feds are downstairs. They've surrounded the building. Special Agent Miller is in the lobby. You can't escape. There's nowhere to go." "Escape?" Nora laughed, a sharp, brittle sound like breaking glass. She shook her head, looking at him with genuine amusement. "Arthur, you still don't get it, do you? You think this is about money? You think this is about getting away with it? I'm not trying to escape. I never planned to leave this roof." She raised her right hand. In her palm, clutched tight, was a small, black industrial remote. A detonator. Arthur froze mid-step. The blood in his veins turned to ice. "What is that?" "The Sterling building," Nora said, gesturing grandly to the 70-story monolith beneath their feet. "Your monument, your Tower of Babel. You built this place on the bones of men like Marcus. You built it on lies, on stolen pensions, on ruin. It's a cancer, Arthur, and you don't cure cancer, you cut it out." She took a step closer to the edge. "I rigged the server room 3 hours ago," she continued, her voice steady. "I've overridden the safety protocols on the cooling system. The lithium-ion battery banks in the backup generators are overheating as we speak. Thermal runaway has already started. In about 5 minutes, the basement turns into a thermobaric bomb. This whole building comes down. We're going to scrub the skyline clean." "You're insane," Arthur whispered, the horror constricting his throat. "There are security guards down there, police, firefighters, innocent people." "There are no innocent people in this building, Arthur," she screamed, her composure finally shattering, her face twisted into a mask of pure fury. "Everyone here knew. Your board members, your VPs, your lawyers, they all knew you were a fraud. They all took their bonuses and looked the other way while good men died. I cleared the cleaning staff an hour ago with a fake fire alarm. The only people left are the rats. And us." "And you?" Arthur asked, his voice trembling. "You're going to die too? Is that the plan? Suicide?" "I died 15 years ago," she said softly, the anger draining away to leave a desolate emptiness. "When Marcus hit the water, Nora Vance died." Evelyn was just a ghost I wore to haunt you. Ghosts don't get to live, Arthur. They just fade away when their business is finished." Arthur looked at the detonator, his mind racing. He looked at her eyes, the eyes he had fallen in love with, the eyes that had lied to him every single day. He realized she meant it. She was going to kill them both. She was going to burn it all down. He took a step forward, desperate. "Nora, listen to me. I did it. I drove Marcus to the bridge. I hired the guys who threatened him. I terrorized him. I am a monster. I admit it." Nora stared at him, tears welling in her eyes, shimmering in the half-light. It was the confession she had sacrificed her life to hear. The vindication she had craved for a decade and a half. "But," Arthur continued, reaching slowly into his pocket, "I didn't kill him." He pulled out the red velvet box Tobias had given him. He opened it and took out the single silver bullet. He held it up to the rain. "Marcus didn't jump because of me, Nora. He jumped because he was ashamed." "Liar!" Nora shrieked, raising the detonator. "Don't you dare lie to me now, not at the end." "He was embezzling too," Arthur shouted back, his voice cracking with the strain. "Marcus wasn't the saint you thought he was. We were partners, Nora, not rivals. We were running the scam together. It was his idea. He wrote the original algorithm." Nora staggered back as if slapped. "No, that's impossible. Marcus was good. He was honest." "He panicked when the SEC got close." Arthur stepped closer, his eyes locking onto hers. "He wanted out, but he couldn't leave without exposing himself. He killed himself because he couldn't face you. He couldn't face telling his brilliant, ethical fiancé that he was a crook just like me. He died to protect your image of him." "Stop it!" Nora covered her ears with her free hand. "Check the drive," Arthur yelled, pointing at the void where the city lay. "The drive you stole from me. The encrypted folder labeled MV. It's his confession, Nora. It's a video he recorded for you. I kept it safe for 15 years because I couldn't bear to destroy his memory for you. I let you hate me because the truth would have broken you. I took the blame to save you from the shame." Nora looked at Arthur. She looked at the city below, the world spinning dizzily around her. The wind whipped her hair across her face, blinding her for a moment. The absolute certainty that had fueled her for years began to waver. For the first time, she looked unsure. She looked like a lost child. You protected me," she whispered, the words barely audible over the wind. "I loved Marcus," Arthur said, tears streaming down his face, mixing with the rain and blood. "He was my best friend, and in a sick, twisted way, living with his ghost for 7 years, I think I learned to love you too." "Evelyn." Nora lowered the detonator. Her hand trembled violently. She looked at the device, then at Arthur. The hate drained out of her, leaving her hollow. She had spent her life building a weapon, only to find out she had aimed it at the wrong target. "It doesn't matter," she said, her voice dull and lifeless. "The generators are already critical. I can't stop it now. The timer is locked. The sequence is hard-coded." Arthur looked at the detonator. "How long?" Nora glanced at the blinking red light on the device. 2 minutes. Maybe less." Arthur looked around the roof. There was no way down. The stairs would be a death trap. The elevator was locked. They were trapped on top of a volcano about to erupt. Then he saw it. "Jump," he said. "What?" Nora blinked, confused. "The window washing rig," Arthur shouted, pointing to the east side of the building. "It's moored on the 68th floor for maintenance. It's hanging out over the edge. If we jump, if we time it right, we might hit the platform. It's a 20-foot drop. We might break our legs, but we won't burn." "We'll die," Nora said. looking at the abyss. "It's suicide. We're already dead." Arthur grabbed her hand. Her skin was ice cold. "Do you want to burn in this lie, or do you want to fly? Do you want to take the chance?" Nora looked at him. For a moment, they weren't enemies. They weren't the billionaire and the con artist. They weren't the husband and the wife. They were just two broken people standing on the edge of the world, with nothing left to lose but their lives. She squeezed his hand. A spark of life returned to her eyes. "Fly," she whispered. They ran. They sprinted toward the edge of the roof, hand in hand, their feet pounding against the wet concrete. They didn't look back. They didn't hesitate. They hit the ledge at full speed and leaped into the void, just as the ground beneath them shuddered violently. Boom! A massive, concussive explosion rocked the base of the Sterling building. A fireball erupted from the lower floors, blowing out the glass of the lobby and sending a shockwave up the spine of the tower. The structure groaned, steel twisting and screaming as the support beams gave way. Arthur fell through the air, the wind tearing at his face, the gravity clutching at his stomach. He saw the metal grate of the washing platform rushing up at him through the smoke. He reached out, grabbing for the railing, grabbing for Nora. 6 months later, the Sterling building never fell. The bomb had been powerful, gutting the bottom 10 floors and causing structural damage that would take years to repair. But the tower stood. It remained a scarred, blackened skeleton in the Manhattan skyline, a monument to greed and ruin. Sterling & Co. was dissolved within weeks. The assets were seized, the investors were penniless, and the scandal was dubbed the crime of the century. The Department of Justice spent months sifting through the wreckage, uncovering a web of corruption that implicated senators, bankers, and tycoons. But the biggest mystery remained unsolved. Arthur Sterling's body was never found. Neither was Evelyn's. The police found a piece of torn white fabric caught on the jagged metal of the window washing rig on the 68th floor. They found a bloody shoe on a nearby setback. But the Hudson River is deep and cold, and the currents around Manhattan are unforgiving. The official report stated that they were likely blown off the rig by the secondary explosions or fell into the river during the collapse. They were declared dead in absentia. The case was closed. Most people believe they died. It's the only logical ending. But stories have a way of traveling. Somewhere in a small, forgotten coastal town in Greece, far from the tourist trails of Santorini or Mykonos, there is a tavern overlooking the Aegean Sea. It is a simple place with blue shutters and peeling paint. It is run by a man who walks with a severe limp and has a face that looks like it has been reconstructed by a skilled surgeon. He serves drinks to the locals, speaks broken Greek, and keeps to himself. Every evening, just as the sun begins to dip below the horizon, turning the water to liquid gold, a woman comes in. She has dark hair, cut short and sad, intelligent eyes. She sits at the corner table, the one furthest from the door. She orders a coffee. Black. She never pays. Instead, she places a single object on the table. A silver coin. The man with the limp picks it up, turning it over in his scarred fingers. He smiles, a crooked, painful, genuine smile, and sits with her. They don't speak, they don't touch, they just sit there, side by side, watching the sun go down. Two ghosts who fell from the sky and landed in a quiet purgatory. Two sinners who found the only thing money couldn't buy, a second chance. Wealth screams, but survival whispers. And that is the incredible, twisted saga of Arthur and Evelyn Sterling. From the glitz of the Winter Gala to the fiery rooftop of Manhattan, their story reminds us that in the game of power, the most dangerous move is love. Did they survive? Are they really in Greece? Or is that just a legend whispered by those who want to believe in redemption? That is up to you to decide. This story shows that no matter how much money you have, you can't buy the truth. And sometimes the person sleeping next to you is the one holding the match. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of betrayal and mystery, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Comment below. Do you think Arthur told the truth about Marcus, or was it one last lie to save his life? And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a story. Thanks for watching.